Kyle was just a normal 19-year-old who loved scrolling through Instagram at night before going to sleep. He lived in a small town in Canada, and every night he would lie in bed with the lights off, looking at memes, checking stories, and sometimes replying to friends. It was his way of relaxing after a long day at college. One night, around 11:45 p.m., Kyle was about to put his phone away when he saw he had a new friend request. The username was strange, something like Nina_239876, which looked like a bunch of random numbers. The profile picture caught his eye. It was a dark, moody photo of a girl with long dark hair standing alone in the woods at dusk. The picture was a little blurry, and the way she was standing made it hard to see her face clearly. It felt off. But Kyle noticed they had two mutual friends, so he thought it was safe to accept. He clicked on her profile to see who she was, but there were no posts, no stories, no highlights, just that one creepy profile picture. He found it odd, but he shrugged it off because sometimes people kept their accounts private. A few minutes later, Kyle was about to plug in his charger when he saw a notification pop up on his screen. It was a message from the new account. The message said, "You have a nice smile." Kyle paused for a second, trying to remember if he had posted any recent selfies, but he couldn't think of any. It felt weird, but he thought maybe it was a bot or someone trying to flirt. He didn't want to be rude, so he quickly typed, "Thanks," and placed his phone face down on the bedside table. As he lay in the dark, Kyle started thinking about the account again. The message was strange, and the timing felt off. Usually, when he got a random message from someone he didn't know, it was followed by a request for something, like asking him to check out a product or a fake giveaway link. But this message was just about his smile, nothing else. He picked up his phone again, rereading the message, and checked the profile again. Still nothing there, just that one photo and the username with numbers that made no sense. He clicked on the mutual friends to see who they were. One was a guy he knew from high school, and the other was a girl from his math class, but he didn't know either of them well enough to ask about this Nina. Kyle tried to push it out of his mind, thinking he was overthinking it, and placed the phone down again. He turned to his side and closed his eyes, but the glow of his phone kept flashing on the wall every time he got a new notification. His heart raced each time he saw the light, worried that it might be another message from that account. After about 20 minutes, he finally fell asleep, but it was a light sleep, the kind where you keep waking up at every small sound in the house. At around 2:30 a.m., Kyle woke up again and checked his phone. No new messages, but he couldn't help but open Instagram again to check the account. It was still there, still following him, still empty except for that picture in the woods. He zoomed into the photo, trying to see her face, but it was too dark and grainy. The trees in the background were bare, and the sky looked like it was turning dark, maybe taken during the fall. There was something about the way she stood there, almost like she was hiding something behind her, or maybe there was someone else standing just out of frame, watching her. Kyle felt a strange chill in his room, like a breeze came in through the closed window, and he shivered. He suddenly felt like he was being watched, even though he was alone in his room with the door closed. The shadows on the wall from the streetlight outside looked longer, almost like someone was standing there in the corner. He shook his head, telling himself he was just scaring himself for no reason. But deep down, he felt uneasy. The next morning, Kyle got ready for college and tried to forget about the friend request. He told himself it was just a random account and that he shouldn't let it bother him. But every time he unlocked his phone to check the time or a notification, he felt nervous, half expecting another message to pop up from that account. During lunch, he found himself checking Instagram repeatedly, hoping the account had unfollowed him or disappeared, but it hadn't. It was still there, quietly following him, like it was waiting. That night, when he came home, Kyle lay on his bed, looking at the ceiling, thinking about how a single friend request from someone he didn't know could make him feel so uneasy. It was strange how something as small as a simple "you have a nice smile" from a stranger could feel so personal, so invasive when you didn't know who was on the other side of the screen. He picked up his phone one last time before bed, checked the account, and locked the screen, telling himself he would block it in the morning. But as he turned off the light, the darkness in his room felt heavy, and the image of that girl standing in the woods stayed in his mind. Kyle had no idea that accepting that friend request was just the beginning of a nightmare he never asked for, and that soon, this harmless-looking account would turn into something much darker than he ever expected. Asterisk, the next day, Kyle tried to act normal, but he couldn't get the strange Instagram message out of his head. He went to college, sat through his classes, and even hung out with his friends during lunch. But every time he pulled out his phone to check the time, he felt a tight feeling in his chest. He kept wondering if he would get another message from that account, the one with the girl in the woods, the one that had told him, "You have a nice smile." It was strange how such a small message could mess with your mind so much, but it was the mystery of not knowing who was behind it that scared him the most. Later that evening, Kyle was sitting at his desk, trying to finish his math homework, but his mind kept wandering back to the account. He picked up his phone and opened Instagram to check if there was anything new. At first, there was nothing, and he felt relieved. He thought maybe whoever it was had moved on or decided to leave him alone. But as he was about to put his phone down, a notification popped up, making him jump. It was another message from that same account. It said, "I saw you at the coffee shop today." Kyle's heart stopped for a second. He had been at a coffee shop that morning, sitting alone by the window while drinking his coffee and reading his notes before class. He looked around carefully, but he didn't remember seeing anyone who looked like the girl in the profile picture or anyone who was watching him. It was a small coffee shop near campus, and there were only a few people there, most of them students working on their laptops. He quickly replied to the message, trying to keep calm. "Were you there? Why didn't you say hi?" The reply came almost instantly, which made it even more unsettling. It said, "I did. I was sitting right behind you." Kyle felt a cold shiver run down his back. He remembered feeling someone behind him when he stood up to throw away his cup, but he hadn't turned around to look. Now the thought that someone had been sitting there, watching him, made him feel sick. He tried to convince himself it was just a prank. Maybe one of his friends messing with him, but something about it felt too real, too creepy to be a joke. He tried to ignore it, but the account sent another message. "You were wearing your black hoodie. You drink your coffee with 2 sugars." Kyle looked down at his clothes. He was still wearing the same black hoodie. It was true, he always put 2 sugars in his coffee, but the fact that this stranger knew these small details about him made it feel like they were following him. It was like someone was documenting his life without him knowing. Kyle stopped replying after that. He felt like if he kept talking, it would encourage them to keep watching him. but he couldn't help himself and checked the account again. It was still empty, just the single dark photo of the girl in the woods. The longer he stared at the photo, the creepier it felt, as if the shadows in the trees were hiding someone else, watching her, or maybe watching him. His mind was racing, and he started thinking about how easy it was for people to track you through social media, to see where you went and what you wore just by looking at your stories or your friends' posts. That night, Kyle had trouble sleeping. He kept tossing and turning in bed, checking his phone every few minutes, waiting for another message to pop up. Every small noise in the house made him jump. The creaking of the pipes, the sound of a car passing outside, the wind brushing against the window, all of it felt like footsteps or whispers, like someone was outside watching him. He kept looking at the window, half expecting to see a shadow standing there, staring in at him through the glass. The next morning, Kyle felt exhausted, but he forced himself to go to college. He tried to act normal, but he kept looking over his shoulder, checking if someone was following him. At the coffee shop, he chose a different seat, one where he could see everyone who walked in. Every time the door opened, he felt his heart pound, expecting to see someone familiar from the photo. But no one looked like her, and no one seemed to be watching him. But he couldn't shake the feeling that someone was there, just out of sight, recording him, taking notes about what he was doing. When he got home that evening, Kyle decided to tell his friend Mark about what was happening. Mark laughed it off at first, saying it was probably just a catfish or a spam account trying to mess with him. But when Kyle showed him the messages, Mark's smile faded. "Dude, that's actually creepy," Mark said, scrolling through the messages. "You should block them." Kyle thought about it, but part of him felt like blocking them would make things worse, like it would make them angry. He decided to wait, hoping the messages would stop on their own. But deep down, he felt like things were only just getting started. That night, as he lay in bed, he kept replaying the message in his mind. "I saw you at the coffee shop today." It was such a normal sentence, but coming from a stranger with a creepy profile picture, it felt like a threat. As he closed his eyes, Kyle felt like he could hear breathing outside his window, even though he knew it was just his imagination. But the fear was real, and it was growing, making him feel like no matter where he went, someone was following him, watching him, waiting for the right moment to get closer. And deep down, Kyle knew that accepting that friend request was not just a small mistake. It was the beginning of a nightmare he couldn't escape. After the strange messages, Kyle tried to avoid Instagram as much as he could, but every time he opened his phone, the app was right there, reminding him of the creepy account and the girl in the woods. He felt trapped in a cycle of fear, checking over his shoulder whenever he left the house, scanning faces at the coffee shop, and feeling uneasy whenever he saw someone with dark hair walking by. Even when he tried to focus on his classes, his mind would drift back to the messages, replaying the words over and over in his head. "I saw you at the coffee shop today. You were wearing your black hoodie." One evening, Kyle was home alone. His parents were out of town visiting family, and his younger sister was at a friend's house for a sleepover. The house felt too quiet, and every small sound seemed louder, echoing in the empty rooms. Kyle was sitting on his bed, trying to distract himself with a YouTube video when his phone buzzed. His heart jumped as he picked it up, and a cold wave of fear washed over him when he saw it was a video call from the same Instagram account with the girl in the woods. At first, Kyle didn't know what to do. His thumb hovered over the decline button, but curiosity mixed with fear made him pause. The phone kept ringing, the screen glowing in the dark room, showing incoming call from Nina _239876. The call stopped, but seconds later, it started ringing again. This time, Kyle's fear was stronger than his curiosity, and he let it ring out. But the call came again and again, until on the fourth ring, Kyle felt like he had no choice but to answer. He took a deep breath and accepted the call, planning to yell at whoever it was to leave him alone. But when the call connected, the screen was completely black. Kyle thought maybe they had covered the camera, but then he heard breathing on the other end, slow and shaky, like someone was standing outside in the cold. The breathing was close to the microphone, and Kyle felt frozen, listening to it for a few seconds that felt like forever. Suddenly, the camera moved. The screen was shaky and dark, showing trees and leaves lit by a faint streetlight. It looked like whoever was calling him was outside, hiding in the woods or behind some bush. The camera turned slowly, moving past dark branches and shadows, and then a whisper came through the speaker, so soft that Kyle almost didn't catch it. "I see you." Kyle's blood ran cold. The camera moved again, and now it showed a dark street with houses lined up, and then, slowly, it moved up to show Kyle's own house, clearly visible on the screen. He could see the front door, the windows, and the light coming from his bedroom window on the second floor. He was looking at himself from outside. He jumped up and ran to the window, looking out into the street. The street lights were on, casting pools of yellow light, but he didn't see anyone standing there. He closed the blinds quickly, his hands shaking, and backed away from the window, breathing heavily. He looked at his phone again, and the call was still connected. But now the camera was pointed at the ground, showing grass and shadows moving as the person walked away. Kyle hung up the call and immediately dialed 911. His voice was shaky as he explained to the dispatcher that someone was outside his house, watching him, and that they had shown him his own house through a video call. The dispatcher told him to stay inside and that an officer would be there soon. Kyle locked all the doors and checked every window, making sure they were shut tight, his heart pounding in his chest. When the police arrived, they checked the area around the house but found no one outside. They told Kyle to keep his doors locked and to call again if he saw anything suspicious. After they left, the house felt even emptier than before. The silence was heavy, and Kyle felt like he couldn't breathe properly, like the walls were closing in on him. He checked his phone again, and there it was, a new message from the account. "Why did you close the blinds?" Kyle felt tears in his eyes as fear and frustration mixed inside him. He didn't reply, but the messages kept coming, one after another. "Don't you want to see me? Come outside. I'm waiting." Each message made the fear worse, and Kyle finally blocked the account, thinking it would stop everything. But the next day, a new account with the same profile picture followed him. The username was different, but it still had random numbers. And it sent him the same message, "I see you." Kyle blocked that account too, but another one appeared, and then another. Each one had the same dark photo of the girl standing in the woods, and each one sent him messages, sometimes just an eye emoji, sometimes a simple "hi," but always reminding him that whoever it was, they weren't going to leave him alone. Kyle stopped going to the coffee shop, stopped hanging out with his friends. and even started avoiding college whenever he could, afraid that the person would show up again, watching him from a distance. Every night, he kept his blinds closed, checked the locks twice, and lay in bed with his phone in his hand, afraid that another call would come. But in the darkness, with only the soft hum of the streetlights outside, the fear never went away, and the feeling of being watched became a part of Kyle's life. No matter what he did, he couldn't escape the cold, silent terror of knowing that someone was out there, hiding behind a screen, waiting for the next chance to get closer to him. After weeks of fear and sleepless nights, Kyle decided to delete Instagram, Facebook, and Snapchat. Every day he was getting new follow requests and messages from different accounts, all with the same dark, blurry photo of the girl standing in the woods. Each account had different numbers in the username, but the same profile picture and the same eerie messages like "Hi, I see you," or "Come outside." The constant fear was destroying Kyle's peace, and he felt like he could no longer live a normal life with this shadow hanging over him. Kyle changed his phone number and stopped going to the coffee shop or any of his usual spots. He tried to avoid being alone outside and kept his curtains closed at all times. He even taped over the webcam on his laptop, afraid that someone was watching him through it. At night, every sound made him jump. A branch brushing against the window, a car driving by, or the house settling made him think someone was outside watching him. His parents noticed how quiet and scared he had become, but he didn't know how to explain that his fear came from a single friend request on social media that had spiraled out of control. For a few days after deleting his social media, things felt quiet. Kyle started to believe that maybe it was over, that whoever was behind the creepy messages had moved on to someone else. He felt like he could finally breathe again, even though the fear still lingered at the back of his mind. He returned to college, though he kept to himself, avoiding eye contact with strangers and walking home quickly after classes ended. One evening, about a month after deleting his accounts, Kyle was working on a paper when he received a text from his friend Mark. The message said, "Bro, is this you?" and had a link attached. Kyle's stomach dropped as he clicked the link, and his heart began to pound as the page loaded. It was a public Instagram account with his name, but he hadn't created it. The profile had the same dark woods photo as its display picture, but what terrified Kyle was the content on the page. The page was filled with photos of Kyle taken from outside his house, at the coffee shop, and while he was walking home from college. Some pictures were of him sitting by the window in his room, clearly taken from outside at night while he was unaware. Others were of him at the coffee shop, reading his notes, wearing the black hoodie he always wore, or walking with his backpack on. The captions were simple, often just emojis like, or the word soon. Kyle's hands shook as he scrolled through the photos, recognizing each location and realizing that someone had been following him for weeks, taking pictures without him ever noticing. The photos were taken from different angles and at different times of the day, proving that whoever was behind the account was not just stalking him online, but physically following him in real life. The last post on the page was a video. Kyle felt sick as he pressed play, terrified of what he would see. The video was shaky and dark, taken from behind some bushes, and it slowly moved to show Kyle sitting in his room at his desk, working on his laptop. He was completely unaware that he was being filmed, and the video zoomed in on him through the window. At the end of the video, the camera shook as the person filming slowly backed away, and the video cut to black. The caption under the video simply said, "Soon." Kyle's breath caught in his throat and tears filled his eyes. The fear he had been trying to escape by deleting social media had found its way back, but now it was worse, real, and right. Outside his window, he realized that this was not just some online prank. It was someone who knew where he lived, what he wore, and where he went. Someone who was obsessed enough to follow him and watch him in his most private moments. Terrified for his life, Kyle called the police, showing them the Instagram page and explaining everything that had been happening for weeks. The police took it seriously, promising to monitor his house and investigate who was behind the account. But even after they left, Kyle couldn't shake the fear that whoever it was would come back, that they were still out there, waiting. A few days later, Kyle made the decision to move away. He switched colleges and moved to a new city, staying with relatives to feel safer. He got a new phone, a new number, and avoided using social media completely. But even with all these changes, the fear stayed with him. At night, he would lie in bed, listening for footsteps outside his window, afraid to open the curtains, afraid to check his phone. Sometimes, late at night, Kyle's phone would buzz with a new friend request on an app he thought was safe, with a new account using the same dark woods photo as the profile picture. Each time, his heart would race, and he would block the account, but deep down, he knew that no matter how far he ran, this nightmare might never truly end. Kyle learned a painful lesson that many people don't think about: accepting a single friend request from someone you don't know can open a door to a nightmare you can't close. It can bring fear into your home and take away your peace, leaving you looking over your shoulder for the rest of your life, wondering if the next shadow you see in the streetlights outside is them, watching you, recording you, waiting to get closer.